Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava again. Welcome to Tidbits on Business and Finance with me. Raghuram Rajan, the former governor of the Reserve Bank of India, has been a polarizing figure of sorts for the Bharatiya Janata Party. He was too independent-minded, too autonomous, and too well qualified to suit the control-oriented requirements of the BJP. Thus, his first term ended in mid-2016 and it was not extended, much as we thought it was a fit case for another term of governorship. As I said, he's been a polarizing figure for the BJP. One section of the party admires him, another is very critical of him. One section of the party thinks that he was not suited for India, and another wants him back with his testimonies. Thus, even though Raghuram Rajan left India and took up his teaching assignment back with the University of Chicago, that was about 2 years ago, he still continues to be in the newspaper headlines in India. His recent comeback to newspaper headlines in India started with Arvind Subramaniam, the outgoing Chief Economic Advisor of India, praising him in his deposition before the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Ministry of Finance headed by the senior BJP leader Mr. Murli Manohar Joshi. Arvind Subramaniam expressed his admiration for handling the NPA crisis and his understanding of the NPA crisis. Mr. Murli Manohar Joshi, taking a cue from there, wrote to Mr. Raghuram Rajan seeking his help or asking him to appear before the committee and give his expert opinion and expertise on how did the NPA problem occur, how did it grow so big, and how do we sort it out. Alternately, he told Mr. Rajan in his request letter that if he can't appear, he must send them a written testimony of his expert opinion on this subject so that it can be considered by the committee. What happened next was Mr. Rajan sent a 17-page reply in response to this request of Mr. Murli Manohar Joshi. In his testimony or expert opinion before the committee, he mentions the entire journey of creation of the crisis of NPA to where we are today. So he mentions how did the NPA crisis get created, the reasons for it, which includes reasons like malfeasance, frauds, corruption, incompetent bankers, etc. So he starts with the reasons. He mentions the need for restructuring bad loans and why were the restructurings done. He talks about the need for RBI to enforce a disclosure of the NPAs which the banks were not disclosing. He then mentions the fact that the Reserve Bank is not responsible for creation of the NPAs because, as he says, the RBI is a mere umpire, it is not a player. He then refutes the fact of any connection between the build-up of NPAs and the slowdown of the economy with the RBI policies. In other words, he clearly mentions that the RBI policies have not been responsible for the economic slowdown in India. He cautions about the fact that the government must be bothered that this problem doesn't recur again, and also mentions the reasons why the NPAs continue to mount. His testimony was a mere objective historical summary of the period in which he was the RBI governor and the way forward. The key issue at the moment is to try to resolve this giant NPA crisis in India, which is defying a resolution at the moment. India continues to stagger around the NPA crisis, and till it is not resolved, our economic growth will not pick up its true potential. And what does the resolution of this problem mean? The resolution of this problem means recovery is effected. The resolution means that fraudsters, willful defaulters, those who deliberately defaulted on bank loans are punished. And to us, it also means that those corrupt bankers who gave loans for monetary inducements are also identified and punished. Mr. Rajan in his testimony also warns that the government should not indulge in speculative loan waivers and it should also not interfere in the management of banks. Mr. Rajan thus issues a warning, or he takes the issue of what does the government need to do to prevent the recurrence of yet another NPA crisis. He mentions that the real reason for the NPA crisis and if these reasons are tackled, the crisis will not occur again, is the fact of political interference in the management of banks. He mentions the fact that public sector boards, their directors, their managing director and chairman, they are appointed by the government, and these decisions are extremely political. These bank top executives are not appointed by an independent professional body, and in the process, not only is the appointment not professional, but bank boards lack professionalization. It results in increased politicization of bank managements and loans being doled out by way of political favors. He says that the other issue related to this is bankers have been proving to be incompetent. There's a competence deficit amongst the bankers, and that needs to be sorted out by bringing in outside talent. The next reason why the bad loans occurred and where the solution lies is to ensure that project appraisals, project due diligence, project monitoring, project supervision is strengthened, which he thinks banks have not done a good job. He thinks that unless this is not strengthened, we will see a recurrence of bad loans again. And finally, he mentions a very stringent recovery process. A recovery process where the bank does not lose years and years in trying to recover the loans and is able to get it swiftly and effectively. These, he thinks, are the reasons which will ensure that bank NPAs do not occur. According to us, a certain amount of bank NPAs will occur from time to time, but those would be on account of genuine banking risks and not account of corruption and incompetence that Mr. Rajan points out, and also not because of political interference if the system is sorted out. He warns the government against fixing targets or against lending to the public on a big scale against targets, and he also mentions the fact that loan waivers are detrimental to the system. The sum and substance of Mr. Rajan's letter, the sum and substance of his advice is stop political interference in banks, and you will find that the NPAs will come down. This is the most obvious and most prudent and sage advice, but let me tell you, no politician has ever followed this very obvious advice ever since banks were nationalized in India. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.